before we begin, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind everyone of a few things that are available. Where is it? There we go. Take the opportunity to remind everyone about all of the resources available to the Arbortext community. Ours is a large and very tight-knit community. Over the years, as things have changed, and particularly after the acquisition, we found that a lot of people don't know all of the resources available to them as Arbortext users. I've got a chart here. It's from the list maintained by Single Sourcing Solutions. The URL for the page is there at the bottom of your screen. This is as near a complete a list as we've got. All of them are free resources, or most of them are, and almost all of them are online. Going across then down, there are mailing lists. Adapters has been around since 1997, and Arbortext R&D and Project Management monitors and answers questions on the list. The 3B2 user group on Yahoo has been focused on the Arbortext Advanced Print Publisher, formerly known as 3B2, and has been around since the early 2000s at least. The Adapters Code Archive is a repository of customization codes, snippets, and other useful bits. The user group, that's us. And there's an advisory line for the times that you're stuck, need a quick answer, and can't wait for the mailing list to get back to you. On the next row, we've got Community Voices, structured authoring blog by Doug Wade. He talks about XML, SGML, and has lots of Arbortext tips and tricks. Words in Boxes is by James Sulak. He's more of an Arbortext developer blog. There's the Single Sourcing blog. It's also got a Kindle edition and can be delivered by email because we all know it's just another format. The PubWrite podcast is interviews with people in the Arbortext community. These are folks that you read on the mailing list or talk to and meet online or at conferences, and in fact our presenter today is the subject from one of those casts. In the next row are other communities. We're on Facebook. Our user group has a group on Facebook. There's also one dedicated to APP 3B2. There's lots of folks on Twitter who continue to post regularly. We're live tweeting this event today. There's even a group Twitter account that we all use to coordinate our activities during events like PTC User. We're all on LinkedIn. There's a blog on DITA.xml.org that focuses on the cross-up between Arbortext and DITA. In the last row, we've got Planet PTC community pages and the forums of PTC. These have more visibility than the mailing list, and a lot of people are starting to monitor and answer questions there. The Planet PTC community is kind of in its infancy. Not as many people with deep knowledge are there for Arbortext. There's one exception, and that's for ISODraw. There's no better place to get information about ISODraw than on the Planet PTC forums. PTC is taking over the World event, the annual user conference, at least here in the U.S., although PTC User continues to provide guidance and assistance with the programming. PTC User drives the technical committees. I encourage everyone to join and help guide product development and the direction of PTC products, especially the Arbortext product line. There's pictures of Arbortext folks over the years at various events. See them and get a little bit of history on Flickr. And last but not least, there's the Squidoo Lens, all things Arbortext in one place. Again, if you want to see this full list and just be able to click on the links for these items, go to the URL at the bottom of the slide, and we thank Single Sourcing Solutions for donating time and resources to keep the list available to everyone. So one more thing real quick. These are upcoming events. We've got next week, there's a webinar. Gene Kaplansky from PTC is going to get under the hood with Arbortext Digital Media Publisher, keeping in line with today's theme. Submissions for Planet PTC Live in Las Vegas next June are due on November 22nd. I encourage everyone to submit a presentation. Tell us what you've done. It makes the conference better for all of us. And just to sweeten the pot, remember, presenters attend for free. The Gilbane Conference in Boston is coming up December 1st and 2nd. On the 7th of December, Zarella Rendon is going to give us our first glance of the new Service Information Solution product that PTC will be releasing next year. In January and February are the next two meetings. There are none in November or December. It's a busy enough time as it is. In January, we're going to hear what the Social Security Administration has implemented, and in February, we're going to hear from Nikon Precision, who's implemented Arbortext Content Manager and who's completely transformed their business with DITA. Today's presentation is an ACL tool to find and replace XML attribute values by Todd Hicks. Todd has been working in legal publishing for 20 years and with Arbortext for more than 10. In high school, he ran the old printing press and knew that he wanted to be involved in publishing. An English major in college, he became a proofreader for CCH Incorporated and quickly moved to technical writing, then to programming, especially for publishing and user interfaces. When CCH converted to SGML, he wrote WordBasic OmniMark scripts. When CCH started using Arbortext Editor, he learned ACL, Java, and JavaScript, built dozens of tools, and designed the infrastructure for the editor and its interface with the Information Manager, their CMS at the time. He now leads a team of editor programmers to build tools and infrastructure for the Arbortext Editor and its interface with Documentum at Wolters Kluwer. He's presented at numerous times at Arbortext conferences, and we're delighted to have him today. Now I'll turn the presentation over to Todd Hicks. Todd, it's all yours.
I'm all yours. Can you hear me?
A little soft.
Is this thing on?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Okay, this tool was a long time coming. Basically, when we went to SGML long ago, and we went to a depth editor, one of the first things that I was asked to build was some kind of a global find attribute replace tool. There really is no such thing in the editor. So let's change pages here to the Wolters Kluwer page. So basically, Wolters Kluwer, referred to affectionately by the people who work for him as Uncle Walter, owns, I understand, more than 100 publishing companies around the world. I don't know why I was so attracted to publishing, and why it just happened that I got into it. It's just something I've always loved and loved to be around. You know, being an English major type, I like words, and I like the idea of conveying information. It excites me to do that. So basically, the people that I build stuff for, I don't like to think of development as being entrepreneurial. I do not call them my customers. So it's not entrepreneurial. I'm not trying to sell them anything. But they're the ones in the company that bring in the revenue. And development doesn't bring in any actual revenue. All we do is we speed things up so that we can get to market quicker. And we can actually let our editors, I think of the editors as being the actual fishermen who actually bring in the fish. And what we do is we build the nets, we build the factories to put the fish in the cans, you know, so we can sell cans of fish. Anyway, so WK is a huge company. Next page, please. The vision. I love it that they give us this stuff to every time that I do a presentation, I have to tell the Wolters Kluwer story. I could read exactly what you see on the screen, but the idea is that we want to be the very, very best product, and my dream is to actually have the best Arbortext implementation in the universe. When I'm giving the pep talk to my team, that's what I tell them. And my philosophy is that, you know, since we build tools for the editors, what you want to do is you want to increase efficiency and decrease error, you know. And one thing about that is you want to make it very easy for the users to do the right thing, very difficult for them to do the wrong thing. Okay, so next page, please. CCH. Commerce Clearinghouse is more than 100 years old and was bought in 1995, I believe, by Wolters Kluwer, an Amsterdam-based company, like I said. And so there is CCH Incorporated in Chicago. I lived in Chicago for 14 years. I'm from California, and a few years ago I managed to move back, and I work from home, which is nice. So there's a CCH China, CCH Canadian. I believe there's a few other CCHs around. Uncle Walter owns a lot of companies. Okay, next page, please. So the most important thing in my life is when the editors come up to me and say, "Hey, man, it doesn't do this. We need to do that." You know. So if you go to find tag attribute, as you can see, you can look for an element whose specific attribute value is such and such, and it will find those for you. If you want to change them, then after you click Find Next, you can close this box and go to the editor and change it by hand if you want. But there's no way to do that without scripting. So anyway, like I said, one of the first things that I was asked to do was to make a global find and replace for attribute values. Next page, please, the need. So this is what they asked for. They asked for something that would allow them to change stuff kind of at will. But I didn't really want to get them into. They didn't really want to get into regular expression syntax. See, what you can do is you could treat the thing as just text and just say, give me angle bracket element name space attribute name equal sign quote blah quote, and then you know, character class. Anything followed by a closed angle bracket. And I think you all know how, everybody here probably knows a fair amount of regular expression syntax. But if we match that, and what this would do would be that /2 means that the second part of the thing found up there, which I believe is the dot plus, meaning everything after element name, attribute value inside the opening tag. So you want to change the effect from pop-up to rapid. You could do it that way, this way. But they just couldn't do it. They just did not want to do it that way. We were not going to teach them regular expression syntax. I mean, you know, there's a great, huge fear in publishing that you're going to mess everything up. Anyway, next page, please. So basically, I have an ongoing conversation with the editors about stuff. And we had long conversations about what they would want to do with this thing. Sometimes what they want to do is they want to say, find this string and change it to that string. Or sometimes they want to say, find any string at all. We know that if there's something there, we know it's wrong. We want to change it to this. And if it's empty, we want to know if if it's not specified, we want to specify it. So anyway, they wanted various ways to restrict the search context. You know, like only in a selection, pretty standard word processing stuff. Only within a certain element. Only with a where clause of kind of other attribute equals such and such. Okay, next page, please. So they wanted to be able to do this in batch all at once, or one at a time. You know, find next, replace, find next, replace. So I had to build it into that, build that into the code, into the behavior. I love doing this. My favorite thing in the world is to actually build a dialog box that does things, you know, and kind of jumps around, and when you do stuff, it reacts and does things. Does a lot of things. That makes me happy. It makes my users happy. They like it that I do things like that. I think that that tools like this are a very good idea for any organization at all that uses XML. Because XML is kind of difficult for people. I mean, people's eyes tend to glaze over a little bit when they first see it. Arbortext Editor certainly helps with that. But when they have to do things like this, they love having a tool to do it with. Anyway, there are various requirements. They don't want to be able to break anything. They don't want to be able to create invalid XML. Well, one thing that popped to mind immediately when they said that was if they wanted to change an attribute whose legal values in the DTD or whatever are enumerated at specific list, like what they call a name token. You don't want to be able to change to something that's not in that list. Also, if it's a fixed attribute, you don't want to be able to change it at all. You don't want to be able to give them a tool. You don't want to give them a tool where they can't change it at all. Sorry, kind of stumbling as I speak. Okay. Okay, so there's some of the replace things. Next page, please. So I knew that I would have to have some code that actually talks to the open file and does things. And code that handles the dialog itself. There's a lot of sort of do this, do that kind of stuff when you're dealing with dialog code, which I think is a lot of fun. So I knew there would be a fairly busy, I tried to keep it from being too busy, but a fairly complex user interface with a lot of stuff in it. And basically, what I wanted to do was make something that would work with any DTD or any schema or anything at all, and did not have any business logic in it at all, if at all possible. And in fact, this thing works with any DTD. I've used it with many different. I used it with AX.book and several different DTDs that we have. Okay. Next page, please. Okay, I don't know if you all know what XUI is. It's based on what was called it's based on XUL, XUL, which was I think what was XML user interface language. And this XUI is XML user interface, and it's basically a doc type that contains all the stuff that Arbortext decided it needed to build dialog boxes. So now all of their dialog boxes are basically XUI dialog boxes. I myself would really rather not have to open up an XML file and change the height. You know, if I wanted to make it a little bit taller, change height equals to 81. I'd rather not have to do that by hand. Next page, please. So this is my basic interface design tool. A piece of paper. I drew it out. I figured out that what I needed was several different frames containing different things. Also, I needed a place to set a cookie down. You see that sort of dark circle on the lower right there? I set a cookie on it, I remember. It was on my table. And I set a cookie down. That's from a cookie. It was right over the cancel button, as you can see. With my analysis, I determined that the dialog required 26 different controls. So I decided the best way to present that much complexity is to have different regions, different provinces in your dialog box that group things together so that the editor, the user is not so overwhelmed by that much stuff. And the same kinds of thing is grouped with other kinds of things of the same sort. Next page, please. So there's, back before XUI came along, there was a thing called ACL Designer. ACL Designer is a very interesting tool built by Galaxy for designing dialog boxes. And it works really nice. It's pretty complicated, kind of busy actually. But it does give you a GUI for designing GUIs. And then when Arbortext came out with the XUI thing, they started packaging an executable that will convert the output of ACL Designer to XUI. So you can actually use ACL Designer to design your dialog boxes, your XUI dialog boxes. And so that's what I did. I decided to go with that because it was just too difficult for me to. I just didn't like the flow I got into, just sitting there changing 79 to 81. Oh, okay. Next page, please. Here's ACL Designer. As you can see, it's got this concept of springs and struts. Every control is connected to some other limit of something near it. The wiggly lines are what's called springs. Those are sprung connections. The straight lines are struts, and they're solid connections. They don't change. But you can move that around. But what this does is it gives each control a name, and then when you translate that into XUI, that becomes its name. And then what you've got is a basic XUI dialog. You know, I don't recommend, if you don't know anything about ACL Designer, it's certainly a steep learning curve, but I really do recommend. If you're sort of the artistic type like me, and if you think visually, I think it's much better to actually design your dialog boxes as if you were using a GUI, you know, an actual GUI. Because there are a lot of basic concepts of dialog box design that I think get missed by a lot of people. But see, the way it works is, next page, please. ACL Designer some more. Pretty busy, huh? So, in most Western languages, you read from left to right and top to bottom. I think that the way that the story of the dialogue should tell, the plot, the Act 1 is on the left. Act 2 is in the middle. Act 3 is on the right. And the end of it is on the bottom. So your eyes start on the left, move across the thing. They start up above. So it's interesting, as it turns out, in various studies, they have found that people, when they're thinking, they tend to look up at about a 25-degree angle above the horizon when they're thinking. And they kind of want to understand something. So what I like to do is I like to put near the top of the dialogue, I like to put some information about what will be the effect of their action. And at the very bottom of the dialogue, I want to have the action buttons. Okay, does that make sense? Next page, please. So whenever you save an ACL Designer file, what you're saving is a .vr file. And what you do then is you you run this vr to zui.exe on it with various arguments, and it outputs it reads the binary and it outputs the Zui XML that it read from the actual VR binary. So having to do this is really a pain in the neck, and it's kind of hard to justify the amount of time that it takes, you know, unless you can convince your boss that you can walk on water, which I don't know if I've really done that. But they love this thing, so I was allowed to do it. And it took me several months. It took me 2 months, I think, to build it. The good thing was we had the requirements down pretty well, and I made a pretty good design, and the users accepted the design, and I felt comfortable with the requirements. We did a fair amount of back and forth, but that was good. It's always good to have a lot of back and forth with your users if you can. Next page, please. So basically, if you open up a Zui file, you're looking at an XML file, and if you want, Arbortext Editor will present that as a dialog box. You can just say, show me the dialog box. Under Tools, View Dialog. That just comes with it. Yay. But to design a dialog box as if you were editing an XML file, to me, that's a little too busy. I've talked to plenty of people who tell me they don't mind it. To me, it interrupts my flow. Okay, next page, please. So this is the final product here. Well, what was made out of all that? And basically, Arbortext Editor addresses this as an actual XML document and has its own way of handling the stuff in it to turn it into a dialog box. And I'm thinking now might be a good time to show it to you. So Liz, why don't you make me the presenter again?
Okay, there we go. Show your screen. Perfect.
You see it?
We do.
Okay. This is Arbortext Editor, as people in my company call it, AE. Arbortext Editor is kind of a mouthful. So what I did was, in Word, I made an auto text so that when I type AE, I get Arbortext Editor because I don't want to type all that much. I think it was a big mistake on PTC's part to call it Arbortext Editor. I think that was a really dumb name for it. I wish they wouldn't do things like that. Arbortext Editor, that's silly. Arbortext Editor, R 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 syllables. But it could have been 2. Because nobody in my company wants to call it editor. That's the job title of my company. And I realized that in Arbortext they call it editor. I think that's very self-centered and very kind of not really realizing what their customers, you know, colloquially, how they use certain words. Editor is a really bad name for this title, this product. I think. That's my big fat opinion. I'm a very opinionated person, sorry. Anyway, here it is. Okay, so here's Arbortext as we have it customized for Wolters Kluwer. So they wanted buttons for all of these entities and stuff. And I drew all these buttons myself. They wanted a button for inserting a section symbol. Just a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, here's the tool. So there's such terror of people going in and wrecking the content that I had to password this thing. The password is ... as you can see. Oops. And here's the thing. So let's basically find and do a change of the pub attribute on an XREF element, on all the XREF elements that are within a certain other element. Okay, as you can you see this? So what I'm talking about is that what I have here is an unordered list which contains several paragraphs and a bunch of items and paras and some XREFs. And I don't want to change the other XREFs. I only want to change these XREFs. So let's find and replace a specified value. So XREF, change XREF pub from ha to RABBIT when it's inside of unordered list. I think I'll replace all. Let's see what it does. So I found 3 of them. And there it goes. And it changed them, as you can see. That's how it works. They were so terrified of this that I had to give it an undo. What they wanted was several layers of undo. So in phase 2 of this project, there's going to be an undo list. There'll be like several undos. So there's the thing. That's how it works. So let's go back to the presentation, please. The dialog behavior initialization page. So this is the basic idea of how you're going to set up a dialog. I recommend that everybody create their own dialog boxes. I think it's totally wonderful to give users, they think in terms of dialog boxes. They will draw you a picture of a dialog box and set a cookie on it, like I do. So basically, the first thing that I do is to create the global values in my code. So basically, ACL code almost always, the best ACL code starts at the very bottom. So the first thing I do is I initialize. I grab the dialog, I grab the ZUI, and I load it to memory as a doc. Next page, please. And what this is doing is it means, hey Arbortext Editor. I'm sorry for ranting about that a while ago. As you can see, I feel pretty strongly about it, but it's really okay with me. We call it Arbortext Editor. I insist on calling it Arbortext Editor, even though people often call it Epic around our shop still. I like Adept. I think Adept is a very good name. What it means is that the people who use it are experts. So the first thing you do is you grab that that ZUI and you load it into an object, a doc object that is returned by the doc open function. And can be used to create a window. So the first argument to the window create function tells you what kind of a window to create, and it tells you that you're reading a ZUI to create the window, I guess. And you're using this doc object that you've already instantiated by reading the ZUI document, the ZUI file that this thing that represents this thing. So in your code, you're going to need an object that is the dialog itself. So after you do the window create, that returns the actual dialog window. You need to be able to address that dialog window so gaffer dialog in this case as the return from window create all the way through your code is used in any function that needs the actual window handle. So the next thing that you want to do is I recommend have a whole function for adding callbacks to all of the controls that you've got. A callback is basically the event, the handling of the event when the user does something with the control. Next page, please. So dialog item add callback. The first argument is the window handle. The second callback is the actual control to which you are adding the callback. And the third argument is the function within the same package that ACL needs to be able to find. So there is a function called change list element. And a mistake that I made at first, I didn't really remember at first that when you specify the function name, when I think in terms of a function, when I mention a function, I pretty much always follow it by paren. So in this case, you don't do that. You just specify the name of the function in quotation marks. And this is part of my add dialog callbacks function that adds callbacks to all of the elements, all of the controls. They each get a function in this package that handles anything that happens with it, any event. So basically, a dialog item callback is one of those things that ACL just hands you. And when you specify a callback, you're going to have that callback is going to know what event happened to call it. Next page, please. So basically, here's some code. I know it's kind of busy. I asked my boss if it was okay if I posted this somehow, and it's completely not okay with him if I post any code at all. I can't share any code that I've ever written. I would like to be able to, but this is pretty much all of the important lines in this function. So you saw that list of elements in my dialog. So this is the callback on any event on that control, that list box. So as you can see, the very first thing that I'm doing in this is as soon as this callback is exercised, I'm preparing to just jump out of it if I have to. As you can see, the very first thing that I'm doing in this is as soon as this callback is exercised, I'm preparing to just jump out of it if I have to. As you can see, the very first thing that I'm doing in this is as soon as this callback is exercised, I'm preparing to just jump out of it if I have to. As you can see, the very first thing that I'm doing in this is as soon as this callback is exercised, I'm preparing to just jump out of it if I have to. A dialog item callback by nature has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arguments. The first argument is always going to be the handle to the dialog that's being that the control is in. The second is going to be the actual control in the dialog. The event, the third, is going to be is handed to you by Arbortext, which is really nice. Item focused in this case means the user just clicked in it, or so I don't want to necessarily fire off my dialog dialog callback behavior every time the user clicks on something, or any time, because the callbacks will be called anytime any event ever happens to a dialog, even when it loses focus. Anyway, this is pretty busy. I try not to get too much busy code in all this, but as you can see, there's a bunch of things you got to do. You want to know where where the user just clicked. This is code that actually, when you change the selected item in the element list box, you want to change the list of attributes that are selectable in the attribute list. Liz, why don't you make me presenter again? Let me show this to you.
Here we go. Share your screen. We see it.
You see me?
Yes, we do.
So basically, what this does is that when this thing fires off, it gets a bunch of arrays, and it finds out all of the elements that are in the file. Not all the elements that are in the DTD, but only elements that are actually in the file itself. If something is in the DTD and not in the file, I didn't want to make a screen that was all full of stuff that they couldn't do. Anyway, as you can see, EXP level 1 has all of these attributes. And then if you want to change the attributes on group, so this is what I do. It's basically, I have, as you saw on on the slide with my code, basically when you change this list, that when you change what you've selected on this list, what it does is it changes everything else. So these are all the attributes on XRF. So basically, it's funny, there was a lot of fear of this. So I was told to put in some scary warning boxes. I don't know if you can read this, but it says, you have chosen to delete attribute effect on XRF effect equals any. Then I had to tell them what the default value was. So they needed to know all this stuff. So basically, what you got to do is read your users' minds, give them exactly what they want. Easy, isn't it? Simple. Okay, this is the scary, the mean warning box. It says, you better be darn sure you want to find any and delete it. You will be punished if you wreck this file. Okay to continue. So if they want to wreck this file and get in trouble, the user representative that I talked to told me that if they click OK to continue, then they should get a 500-volt shock in their chair to punish them, to teach them not to do things like that. So I was told. So click OK to continue. What? So it didn't finally, so I'm safe. I'm not going to get electrocuted today. Okay. So Liz, next page. Dialog item set. What this does is it basically it takes the controls that you have that it knows about. You know, it knows it's looking in the window that was created, which is called Gaffer Dialog. So that's the first argument there. That means look in that object. That first line says, what happens is you've already created an array of attributes. And what you're going to do is you're going to populate the list box with that array. Not that difficult. Kind of fun. I find this very satisfying. And the same thing, you can actually set the controls to being active, kind of grayed out or not. Active 0 means not active, I believe. Okay. Next page, please. So this is my little trick. Basically, depending on certain situations, I had to make certain controls just disappear, either appear and disappear, appear or disappear. So you can set the control to being visible, and then that's either true or false. So I had set attr type earlier in my code to 0 if the attribute is a name group, and to 1 if it's C data. So as you can see, this is either setting it to true or false, either visible or not visible. It's visible if it's C data, and not if it's false. That make sense? Next page, please. XML ACL code. So basically, ACL is great for talking to XML, but there's basically two kinds of things you can do with XML in your ACL code, and you can either find out things about the actual content model in the DTD itself, or you can find out things about the open file, or change things in the open file. So basically, the functions that start with TAG underscore ask the DTD questions. And the functions that start with OID underscore ask about the particular XML object that you're looking at in the file right now. So, for example, tag has attr is Boolean. It's either going to return true or false. So if you have, I just saw above, if tag name was xref and attr name was pub, because you saw that I actually was changing pub on xref. So tag has attr, xref comma pub would return true, and OID has attr. If you're looking at this xref, OID has attr means, I believe, that attribute is specified in the actual XML instance. It's not equals quote quote. It really is something really right there. This right there. Okay. Next page, please. Doctype Info. Basically, you can find out all kinds of stuff just asking the DTD. So get LM attrs populates these arrays. That's my code. I've already gone through an array. Hold on a second. Okay. As you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm filtering out the Documentum namespace attributes. I do not want to allow the user to change those. I'm only populating my working array with those attributes whose names do not start with DCTM. Next page, please. And this is a tree walker. This is going to forward next through all of the OIDs and just OID forward, keep on OID forwarding, which means jump to the next galley, the next inline, the next OID inline, the next XML node inline, and just keep going. And so you go there. So you want to, I want to stop here. I want to not use, it will return, when you're actually doing a tree walk, you actually can get an OID of generated text. So you don't want to allow them to try and change generated text. You'll get problems. Here's another little trick I did. Basically, I created a bunch of functions that determine whether or not it's safe to do the thing they want to do. As you can see, I have a function here called any search underscore go. So basically what that does is asks if it's legal to do an any, find any, and replace kind of search. And that returns either 0 or 1. And what I've done is I've actually, in a different part of this code, I've actually returned from different underscore go functions all these different EO, ES, you know. So basically, eek. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm fine. So I go through it and I test all the situations that I might want to do, depending on what the search is, what the kind of find and replace it is. So basically, this if test here will come out true if any of these these go functions did in fact return true. If any of them is more than 0, we will continue into the curly braces. Another tricky thing to do. Next page, please. Doctype Info. This is about the modify markup. I'm sorry. So basically, sort of central hub of a tool like this is basically going to do a modify attribute on some particular OID. So what I like to do is I like to actually wrap all that in one big thing. So I've got basically a nice big array of OIDs that I know I want to modify. I don't want to modify the ones that generated text, for example, when I'm marching through all the nodes. And I already and in this function here, I already know what attr name and attr replace value is. So and it shows that I've got some logic around whether I'm supposed to delete the attribute or not. I don't want to confuse you or bore you with all this code. I know it's pretty busy stuff to look at. But these are kind of some tricksy kinds of things that you'll find yourself doing if you're building dialog boxes, or if you're building tree walkers that do things in batch. Next page, please. Well, I already kind of demonstrated it. Shall I show it again? I don't think I need to. It's a pretty clever little pile of code. I'm rather proud of it. And what I like about it is that I like dialog boxes that do things that kind of keep you awake when you do stuff in them. When you click in them, when you click in one part, something happens in another part of the dialog. That's kind of fun. I like stuff like that. It's like when you're talking to somebody and they're saying, uh-huh, like their reaction to what you're saying. So anyway, they really love this tool. It's made quite a difference. They tell me that it saves quite a lot of time in situations where they had 179 instances of something or other that had to change. A lot quicker than just going through one by one or hiring somebody to write a script to do it. It allows them to do it on the fly. They like that. Next, please. So ACL is good for you. I realize that when you tell people you're writing an ACL, they say, oh, it's that proprietary language that Arbortext uses themselves. Nobody knows it. You can't hire an ACL programmer off the street. I recommend it. I think that if you're using a particular application and it has its own API, the best way to do things within that application is using the company's API, because it means you're using the way that they think of the tool, the way they think of the application. So anyway, learn ACL, make good code and good interfaces, and you will have, next page please, smooth sailing. That indeed is my sailboat underneath the Golden Gate Bridge on a beautiful day. Okay. Next page, please. Are there any questions?
So we do not have any questions from the audience at this time. If anyone wants to type their questions in, we had one technical difficulty early on, but I think that's been answered. Anyone has questions, type it in today. It's been that's a pretty technical presentation, and I know that those of you who are new at it It's a good handy reference. I keep this around. It's been around on my desktop a couple of years now. Todd, how did you start to learn ACL? Did you just dig in?
Yeah, that's what I did. I dug in at first, and then they sent me to Ann Arbor.
Oh, so you spent time there too. What class did you take up there?
Oh, I can't remember. Beginning ACL, something like that. ACL for Dummies.
And they've got, and it's full. Everything else is, the documentation is pretty documented.
It's pretty good documentation for that. I think that the best way to learn is probably to take a class from Pat. What's his name? I forget his name.
Oh, yeah, he is now. I think you're talking about. Oh, I'm trying to remember what his last name is. But I think he's taken over for John Drystad and is running the engineering organization now.
He is the father of ACL. He created ACL.
Wow.
And it was a very inspiring class for me. I thought it was just great. And then I came back to work, and I told them, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. They love it when you say, yeah, I can do that. I had a boss once who said, whenever anybody would ask him and say, hey, we're programmers, we can do anything.
Huh. Oh, very cool. Well, let's see. I don't see any more questions in the queue. So, Todd, thank you. I can't thank you enough for coming and showing this off today.
Thank you so much for letting me show it off. Everybody likes to show off their own stuff.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing what you're going to submit this year for the conference, and everyone else, make sure you get yours in too. There's never any guarantee you get to go, so submit your ideas now, and then when you get selected, you can say, hey, boss, look what I'm showing off, and here's what we can do, and you get to go free and learn some more stuff. That's good. All right. Then we will see you all in January for our next meeting. And between then and now, there's several other events, if you remember, on the events page, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks, Todd.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.